In the last video, we did this UI, and we're left with this toggle button that we need to style. It looked like it was going to be a nice quick job, and then I realized there's disabled states, try states, various styles. We want to move the label outside, so really it needs its own dedicated video. So the goal of this video is to style this little toggle button here to look like this one here, and we want to include this label at the side of it. So we want a toggle button that when you click, it slides it left and right. And for the intermediate state, we'll probably put it in the center. So it's kind of an unknown state, or change the shape of this. We'll do something. Let's just dive right in. What we did in the end of the last video is I just copy and pasted the checkbox control here, called it toggle button, and I updated all of where it said checkbox in this designer area to just say toggle button. That's all we've done so far. And it's now given us this visual where you can see it looks like blue is the default color for checked, and this purple is for unchecked. So you can kind of see when it's checked and unchecked and indeterminate. So it's all possible states. They just don't look right, so none of the styling's working at the minute. We'll need to make sure we add this toggle button to the app, otherwise it won't get pulled in. So we'll copy the item here, checkbox, and we'll do toggle button. In the control theme now, we need to go and get that from Avalonia because this is the control theme of a checkbox. If we go to the GitHub for Avalonia, go to source, go to Avalonia themes fluent, and then controls, and search in here for toggle button. We want to just nick this exact code here. Now this has got its own designer, and you can see in the toggle button all it's shown is the clicked, the disabled, and the try state. We did quite a few more styles, so we'll keep ours, but we want to copy this control theme part. So we'll copy the control theme right to near the bottom, go into the control theme here, delete, and paste in the toggle button. Now it'll look exactly the same because it's literally what it does already. It's by default going to do that. But now we have control to start editing this. So the first thing we want to do is it's just got a content presenter and nothing else. And we want really to have the label where the content is the label. And we predefine the toggle as a fixed style. So that means we're going to have to change this bit quite a little bit. And if we do, let's start with a border, width of 15, height of 15, and a background of dynamic resource, primary background, or actually primary foreground. It'll be white, won't it? This is for like the circle that we want to define. Corner radius of 7, which is just around half of 15. It would be 7.5. And then we chuck these two in a, what we want, a panel, probably. And we can see then now we have a circle appearing in the center, but underneath. So we probably want this border as well. So what we have at the minute, if I got rid of the content, you can see we just got a circle. We'll need another border around that one. So a border inside of a border will be fine. Do a border, chuck that one inside. And now we can have the outer border, which, based on the style, wants to be this gradient effect. I think that's the hover gradient. So this one can have a, let's just do padding of 10 for now, so we can see inside. A bit much. Padding of 5. The background of dynamic resource, hover gradient. There we go. So now you can see the outside. This will want a corner radius itself as well of, say, maybe 7. Yep. Padding of 10. Right, the padding's not doing what I want because it's growing the content inside. This content presenter is in the way at the minute. Let's just change that is visible to false so we can just see. There we go, that makes more sense. That's hiding behind it. There we go. So you've got a kind of little toggle in here, but this now needs to be in 3 positions. I think the way we'll do it is on this border here. We'll just have a margin that we can animate. So if we did say, by default, we'd want to be, well, this would have to be bound, you see, well, we'll do styles to bind this, but let's simulate it. We could have, say, 20 padding to the left would be enabled. And you could do 20 padding to the right to disable. And then you could do, say, a 10 and a 10 for an intermediate state, and maybe change the background color. So what we can do is set this style. By default, it's normally off. So let's just make it in a default off position for visual. Like so. And then we'll use styles to change all this after. So that's what the slider would want to be. This width thing, I don't think we want this to automatically expand. We want this to be set size and the label to take up the rest. So to do that, what we'll do is inside of this panel, I don't think we want a panel here, then this can be a grid with column definitions of auto, and then fill the rest. Content can really be anything it wants, which is fine. You can cut that out now and do grid.column equals 1. That moves that over. In fact, let's do the same thing again. We'll use an extra column for spacing, and then maybe 10 on that. And now you can see the default style, or something about this has got all these features. So you've got the border brush, border thickness, but they're all set here. So all we want to do is remove border brush thickness, corner radius, all these defaults. But you can see they're also default in there. So let's just completely remove all of these styles. Let's see what this leaves us with. We've got styles here that are changing the styles as well. So I think we'll probably just delete. Again, these seem to be overcomplicated, all these styles. Let's just delete every style for now. And there, we're back to a nice default. You have this hover effect coming from somewhere, which will obviously override, and the font weight. But that's now much closer to what we want. We have a toggle button that's not checked, one that is checked, so that's these two. And then showing the same thing again, checked and unchecked just as a different style with text. Intermediate, and checkbox should wrap this text, which it obviously isn't. So we'll want the text wrapping here to wrap, and there you go, it now wraps around. We might not want this oversized toggle, which I don't think we do, which means this border wants a vertical alignment at the top. That now looks good. So I think we're nearly there in terms of overall visual now. We just need to style it. I think that's the elements all sorted. And we can move into, hopefully, just a style. And I think because this is so similar to the checkbox, let's just take the checkbox's styles and copy and paste these in. And then, in fact, that's a lot of style. I didn't remember there was that much. Tri-state disabled into, no. Okay, let's just redo this ourselves. So we'll take the default style to start with. And this will just be the selector of this toggle box itself. We've styled everything there. We just want probably the font weight, which should be in here. We could do font weight normal. And this should be changing the font weight to normal. And it's not. So again, these content presenters are causing all kinds of issues with the styles. So let's just ignore the content presenter and do label. So that we're going to basically ignore the content altogether then. Or in fact, the label's content will be the content. And because it needs to wrap, this will actually have to be a text block with text in there. And then this is now not updating. So let's just remove that and say default style. And this, we've not put this style inside of the control theme. There we go, that style's back where it should have been. So let's start with the font weight here. Now we should be able to, let's see if we can do font weight is normal, will this work? Yeah. So now can we bind to the font weight of the actual control and do setter property font weight and set it by default to normal? Will this obey? And of course it won't. So we still have that issue with this binding not working. This is where we can change it to binding. And then we do $parent and toggle button dot font weight. And this then, does it listen to the font weight here? Of course, I put it on the one with no font weight. So you can see that binding then works with overriding properties here, but not on the template. This is that whole issue we know about, the kind of bug at the minute where the font weights don't work. Let's see if we can do it from a style here as well, to default style to normal. And you can see that also doesn't bind. So this is all that issue with the content presenter and the bindings inside of the control templates. And we've experimented with multiple ways to kind of get around this. The parent here allows you to then specify a style up here, say, and it will honor that style. But it won't honor when you do that the setters in here or the styles in here. So you kind of forced a different route. Template binding that works on some things doesn't work on content presenter items inside of this structure, as we know. And the way that Avalonia currently work around that is they do the template binding to font weight, but then in here, instead of doing a selector like this, they do another selector, so they do another style with a selector, and they go into here, /template, and then they choose on this named element here. And then on that, they'll do the font weight, and obviously we just need to move this property inside of here then. And then we also need to put the content presenter, we can't just do the name. And finally, we can't bind to the template here, we have to leave that open. And now we have control here of what happens to the button. The problem with that is you lose the ability then in here to say font weight equals bold. That no longer works. So it's a known thing that Avalonia have known about. We've covered it a few times. For now, we still haven't found the best way that I feel that we want to override the styles, but this is how Avalonia do it. So we'll just leave it like that for now. And we can style it in here to set the font weight to normal. On here, also, one thing we want to do is we want a border on the outline. So in the border here, this one, let's just put these onto new lines. We will want a border thickness of 3 and a border brush of dynamic resource, probably the hover gradient. Let's just do background something else for the minute. Now you can see that would be an outline of the checkbox, which would be similar to this. So that's probably what we want. Might want 2 there to be a bit thinner, yeah, probably 2. So for now, let's just leave both of them in. We have the border in the background. We have the border and the background set. Back into styles, what do we want to do? We want to allow this to change. Let's do this moving position thing first on the selector. So we'll have to copy and paste this. And we'll have is checked. Because at the minute, not checked is correct. So actually, yeah, so the default is not checked. We could do the background in this case then as transparent, I guess, like that. So that's the kind of unchecked state. And then we want the is checked style, so this will be checked. And then this one is checked, so we should see something. And on that, we will cut that style out. We'll set the background back to the hover gradient. So now, if that's gone correct, oh yeah, we're not styling the background because we have the background set to that. And could we just set this here to template binding background? Will that work? Yes, so that one's actually worked. And we want to set the background then in this case on the default style. Oops, I overwrote the style and didn't keep it. Let's just copy that. Paste back in the default style. I thought I'd pasted it in, but I hadn't. Default style. Put this back in. We want the background to still be in there now, so that wants to be transparent, which for some reason it's not. Oh, wicked. So it's not binding, it's only binding on a certain type. And yet this one's working. Yeah, so you can see we still have issues with these bindings. This is what is really annoying, that some bindings work, others don't. So could do maybe not :checked. Yeah, so just being more explicit than the default style fixes that bug. There we go. So now we have the unchecked and checked and back in the default style. And the problem here is that's not fully default, that is unchecked, because when it's checked, this style is no longer going to be applied. So we still want another style, which was the original we had, which is just the default style for all of them, which isn't any selector. And we had, well, in fact, if we're doing, yeah, inside here, a style with another selector, and it was the template, the content presenter, the name of this part, and you can see how messy this still is. This is why I think styling needs a little bit more work yet until it's where it should be. Font weight will be normal, and that should fix the buttons. There we go. So now we have a background being set. Let's just get this hover effect out of the way a minute, because I don't like the fact I keep seeing that for now. We can do something on hover if we want anything on hover, to be honest, but for now, let's just, what is it, pointer over? I think it's pointer over, background hover. And yeah, pointer over isn't overriding. So we have all these problems with this getting overridden by some other style, I feel. And this is no longer working because that's getting the background and something. No, so it is this binding, this template binding to background. Toggle button background. So that's not changed it. Foreground. Yeah, so this style, this button style is managing to get some property from a button that we're not overriding by doing this. So we need to be more specific here somehow to force this override to work. And that's where these things are coming in. So as well as the content presenter, for now as the workaround, let's just do the name. And we'll call this part toggle button. So I don't like doing this, but this is all this workaround to fix these kind of problems in styles. So now we can say, because we're styling the button here, the unchecked style, we won't need this not checked. We could just do the part toggle button like this. On that, you could do checked and then part toggle button, and then pointer over, part toggle button. And that, I believe, should work. If we didn't have problems. Oh, we've got to specify the type. You can't just do the name, so that's going to be border. And now, does it work? Doesn't like us doing this. Oh, that's because we haven't got into the template, have we? There we go. Now we've got selection. And we still have this background not being transparent. So the unchecked style still needs this not :checked. So this is really annoying to be able to select into our button inside of here. They definitely need to do something about this kind of styling. All this is a bit ridiculous just for styling something we've made. You can see the background of that label now has got some funkiness going on, even though we've specified the background here specifically. It's getting overridden. Yep, so I don't like the fact that this has all got properties that are coming from somewhere else and we have to keep overriding them. It's a bit crazy. I'm guessing what we could do is rename this from part content presenter. If we rename that to something else, no, they're still managing to select inside the content presenter. So I'm even tempted, because there's rarely a case we want anything on the side, to just change this to a text block and change that to text. Get rid of the template. Now part content presenter would be a text block. And there we go, it gets rid of the styles. So even calling this, there's IntelliSense that expects that to be a content presenter, which is strange. It's literally telling us that part content presenter expects to be that. So there's some hidden logic inside. So we'll just get rid of that altogether. And if we don't override a content presenter, which is where all these problems are, can we now just set font weights and things? Because I really don't want to have to do all this messing of styles. Can this bind to the font weight? Nope. Can we do normal? Yep, so I'll tell you what, because we're going to style this specific for now, and I don't like how messed up these styles are, we're just going to literally set the font weight directly, which means we don't even need that there. The backgrounds on these buttons, I'm still not sure why this is picking up default values. So if we didn't do the not checked and we just did this, this is somehow still picking up a background. This shouldn't be coming from anywhere. This is a toggle button we've overwrote everything about, and it's picking up some background from somewhere. It's not even that one. We got rid of that. You can see it's not that. It's literally finding a colour from somewhere, and it's coming into this control. And if we remove the background, you can see it's gone from there. So setting the background here is binding to a toggle button, and the toggle button is still getting some kind of default background applied. So all these default styles aren't being removed in this toggle button. Whereas if we remove the explicit background binding there, that fixes that one. Now, can we do, that means this is now fixed, the not checked one Well, it might be fixed. It might not even be applying. Yes, that's fixed that. Can we now remove this altogether? Which I bet we can't, because it's no longer going to select the toggle button, as you see. Well, that's at least fixed some of this. The foreground on the font has still got something applied as well. See how it's hovering to white, even though we haven't styled it. And that must just be, again, cascading styles. But luckily, I don't mind that kind of fade on there, although I don't like the fact it's coming from somewhere we don't know of again. We set foreground to dynamic resource primary foreground. Does that then get rid of that effect? Yeah, so now it's got rid of the effect, which is fine. So now we're in control of that as well. The checked then, we now need to move. So when we're in checked here, we want a setter, property, margin, value. And this should now move. In fact, no, this is the margin of this toggle button, isn't it? So that is, oh yeah, that's the right thing. And no, it's not. It's the border inside of the toggle part. It's this margin we want to select. So inside of here, you can see how complicated this is. It's a good job we did a separate video on it. We'll select inside of here to the border that's inside, and its margin. There we go, now we can control. So when it's checked, we wanted the left to have 20 and nothing else to have a margin. Now you can see when we check and uncheck, it changes. And we want to animate that. So that will be an animation on, let's see if it bubbles down. Let's just do setter, property, render transform. Or no, not render transform, it's transitions, isn't it? Transitions. And then transitions in here. And it'll be the thickness, be the margin, and the delay will be 0.021. Let's just do a slow one for now. I think that's broke. That's obviously not where we want to set the transitions. Let's just cut that out of the default style, move all that out. And maybe, let's have a look how we did it in icon button. We put it in the control theme. So we added a setter on the control theme. So we added it here. We've already got one, transitions. So we just want to add the thickness transition, property, margin, duration 0.0.1. And let's see if that transition all passes through to the whole button, which it doesn't. So let's see if we can add these transitions to the border itself, I guess, inside of the template. That will be this border. And in here, can we now do border.transitions? And then in here, we'll add this. This will be the thickness transform. This will be margin. And we'll do 1 second. So surely that's now going to pick up the animation. There we go. Now we have a slow animation. Change that to 0.1. And now we have a nice little toggle. Probably even slightly faster. There we go. The disabled states, I think we'll just do, because there's so many different styles and colours, on the checkboxes, we just did this kind of flat colour. So we'll probably mimic that, to be honest. That's quite a nice way of doing the style. And what we did was just set the colours to this primary hover background, which is in here. It's this darkish colour. So that's probably what we want to do, primary hover background. We'll add a style. Selector is that, colon, what is it? Disabled, because IntelliSense doesn't want to work for me. Setter, property, and this could be primary hover background. You can see that's selected nothing, but it's on the toggle button. We probably want to do it all. Oh, hang on, did we actually forget to do Yeah, we did. We copy and pasted this and forgot to put the is enabled to false on the other side, so we're not even having them as disabled buttons. And then inside of here, we'll do another style, select into the toggle button, and now we can select the border brush to that. We want the border inside of this, the white dot, to be the same. That will be another style with a selector inside of another border. And select on that. And that will be background, is it? There we go. That's disabled that bit. And the final one will be the background as well, isn't it? So background, that's not what I want there. Transparent. No, we don't want to be transparent. Or we would, but when it's checked, it wants to be something different. So what did we do here? We kind of inverted the visual. So for unchecked, it's fine, but for checked, style selector, that, colon, checked. And then we'd want all this style inside again. So when it's checked, we have nothing working there. Disabled, template toggle checked. And that's because we're already in checked. You've got to be at the top level. So we've got to be outside of this for checked. So we'd have to delete that. We'd have to copy all this. And then we'd have to do a colon disabled, colon checked. You'd have to do it at that level. Now in here we can change things. There we go. So now we've got control of the checked styling. And that's where we'd want this to be filled, but this to be transparent. So it kind of inverts the visual. And of course that's now not working in there, which it should be. Okay, it is working, but you can't do transparent because then you're just seeing the thing underneath, you're not cutting out. That'll be a dynamic resource then, a primary background. There we go. So you now got unchecked, checked, disabled, unchecked and checked, disabled, but you want the labels now to be the same thing, which means in disabled, we want this kind of selector here. And the selector on this will be the label, or text block it was. So border, this one's the text block. And you might not even need this, but let's just put it in here first. Setter, property, foreground, value, dynamic resource, primary hover background. And if that works, we'll try and move it out because the text block should inherit that. So we could probably delete that. Go to disabled and at the top, put it there. And of course not. So we do need it embedded in. So we'll just undo and leave it embedded like that. And then we probably want to make that font bold again. That's where we said the font weight when they're disabled wants to be a bit heavier so you can see them easier. All the disabled states are done. Once these are fixed on this side, I think it'll work. Indeterminate, we need to be in the center, which is, where did we do the margin? We've got the margin here for checked. Copy all that style, paste it. Change this to indeterminate, is it? Indeterminant or nent? It's indeterminant, isn't it? There we go. This, I can't remember. Let's go to checkbox and see what it was. It's literally indeterminate, so you just put the exact pseudo class there. Indeterminate background. We'll sort the background after. The margin for now is 10 on both sides. That does that. And probably, I think the background's fine, but let's set the opacity of the background, which is opacity value 0.5. And let's just look at what that looks like. And that's kind of like it. Pair the checkbox indeterminate. So the checkbox indeterminate had the background just a faded colour. And also it didn't have the super highlight. So this was a hover effect. So maybe we match the buttons, otherwise we're going to have two different styles. So that will mean if we had a border brush, it was active gradient, checked primary hover background. So we're using active gradients. Let's just update this style, otherwise it won't match what we're doing. We're going to end up with two different styles here. So active gradient, that's where it's coming from. This background is coming from the checkbox style. So it's actually flowing down from this checkbox style, I think. Those defaults we were on about where the backgrounds were changing. So that explains that mystery. Why we're struggling so much with the toggle button is because our styles here are obviously selecting checkboxes, and a toggle button is a checkbox. So it's inheriting the default style from the checkbox. That definitely explains all that hassle we've had. Indeterminate style then. Primary hover background it had. So that's got the primary hover background. We can get rid of that. The border wanted active gradient as well. So anywhere we see the hover gradient, we'll change to active gradient. There we go. Indeterminate then is basically that. And then the dot also changed to the primary background. So indeterminate border, copy this, background, and this was then dynamic resource of primary background. Oh. There, so indeterminate now, in theory, looks like this checkbox, but you kind of don't notice how that appears sort of grey on this small checkbox, but at least it matches the style. So when you check and enable, it does that. I still don't like the hover effects, but the hover effects need to be this hover gradient. Let's match them first. If we hover over a normal checkbox, it doesn't fill it in. So see how that's filling it in? We don't want that on the unchecked. So in that case, the pointer style, we set in the background here to active gradient, which is not what we want. We want this to be the border brush, and that wants to be hover. So now we've got that style. So the unchecked matches this. The checked fills in, and this isn't filling in. So for that, we want a selector inside of pointer. So actually on hover. We'll have a style selector, select inside. We've got the pointer over already. So actually, we are going to need to do, you can't do it in there. Again, you're going to have to copy that style. Call this one disabled. And then here you want the pointer over and checked. And then you can go into the toggle button. And now we can set the background to hover gradient. There we go. So that's them two done. They're the same style. Intermediate or indeterminate wants to fill as well. So we want that style the same. So can we do pointer? Oh, well, it's easy just to copy that and paste it and do a double style, and we'll do indeterminate. There we go. So that's all the same as the checkbox now. And then we've got the click events, which do things. So this is the bit where it gets all kind of extra work. So when we click, we have a faded checkbox. I don't know whether we want all that style, to be honest. On the hover, and you click, I'm half tempted not to bother with the half press styles. Maybe just shrink it. So like when you press a checkbox, or when you press a button rather, if we just run this now and take a look, when you click a button, it kind of shrinks in. So you see that shrinking in? I think we'll do that on the button here, so it kind of just dips in. As opposed to all them extra styles. I think that's fine. Yep, I like that. You click and it changes. You're hovering and out. I like that as a style. So I think it just needs that click. And I also think, to be honest, that white, when it's over here, probably shouldn't be white. It should be the same colour, which will be the unchecked state selecting into the border like this. Let's copy that bit. Go to unchecked states. Inside of here, when it's unchecked, we want the background of this dot. In fact, that should already be working, and it's not. Unchecked template, toggle button, background. This should be updating that dot, and it isn't. Because this way we still have to do that not semicolon checked for the styles to select. Yeah, so that's still needed here. Now we can change this background to, what is it? Is it primary hover? Nope. It is active gradient. There we go. So do we want that? I almost feel like it, I don't even know whether it wants to be white. I don't know, I kind of like the white, I just don't like the unchecked colour. I'm not sure what I want it to be. And that doesn't quite look right because it's too bright. I think maybe, let's just try changing the opacity slightly. Let's say to 0.7 or something. Yeah, I think that works alright now. It definitely needs to have the dot. And I think that slight fade between that and white is nice. Yep, I like that. And now maybe just some hover effects, which I think we had on the buttons, did we? No, we actually don't have them on there, so let's leave them off for now. Just instant change. But we could do like a hover, or we add them to this actually, let's just add them to both. So when we're changing the colours, we transition the colours out. For the checkbox, that will be the border here. So this will want the border.transitions, and then here we want the brush transition. Property will be the background duration 0:0:1, and again let's just check this works. Of course it doesn't, it's now completely broke. Oh yeah, it has to have the inner transitions like this, so it's a collection. I think that's it. There we go. So now we've got the slow fade there, so we know the border is doing it, or the background. Now we want the border brush. And there you go, you can see that's a nice fade. We just want to speed that up now, 0.75. And that gives us that. In fact, that's still a bit too slow. So there we go. It's a nice fade. Copy that transition. Put that on the toggle button as well, which we already have the animations here. So we can just add those brush transitions to it. And this should now have, slow them down so we can see they're definitely working. And no, they're currently not. So that's animating, and yet the background and border brush is not. And that's again because I keep forgetting we've got a double border here. So let's just copy all them transitions, delete it out of that one, and it's this top level border that has those backgrounds. So this is where it wants the border transitions. Get rid of the margin there. So on the top level border, we transition the background and border brush, and on the inner border, this is the white dot. We should probably comment this so we actually know what we're doing, because this is getting confusing otherwise. This is white dot, and this is the toggle button itself. So toggle button with the inner white dot, and now do we have, there we go, so now that fades nicely. Change that back to fast. There, that's much nicer. That little subtle animation really makes all the difference with these styles. And now we just need what we said, which is that kind of click to shrink. When your pointer's over, or pointer's pressed, I guess, you want the animation. If we take a look at Avalonia's button style, so we can just do exactly the same. All they've done is on pressed, they've done a render transform on the whole object. So we'll just copy that exact style so it matches. And in our style, at the top, say, let's just chuck it at the very top. When it's pressed, there you can see that slight reduction. And to be honest, the size of this button, I think that's not enough. So even though buttons have that, oh, that's way too much. Still a bit too much. There we go. I think you just needed that extra little 0.97. And then you can see when you've got the text. I don't know whether you want to actually just, I think you only want the button, not the label, to shrink. So we don't want that on there. We want that on the template and the border. And this time again, the part button toggle, was it? No, toggle button. And that's where we want the render transform. Let's just do that to really short, see if there's any animation. So there's no animation on that at the minute, which is part of toggle button. So in here, we also want the transform operations, transition, property, render transform, duration 0:0:1 for now. Just shorthand these. And now do we get, there we go, so now we've got that animating. We can now speed that up to match. And now we can change that back to 9.7. There we go. So that's looking a lot like how you'd expect the Avalonia stock button to work. Yeah, I think I like that. So are we done on that button now? Let's just take a look at our final UI and go into the actions. There's the button. If we select now, you can see that's now changing as well between black and white list. And we have a toggle button. I think it's a little bit big, to be honest, though. That looks a little bit big. If you're going to inline it with checkboxes, I don't know whether you'd want it the same height as a checkbox, because they are quite small. But that looks a little bit big. Let's just go to, what shall we do? Maybe the padding? Yeah, actually, that's quite cool. No padding. I kind of like that. That's really clean. Or now, do we leave it at that and have this maybe slightly smaller? 10:10 and the padding of maybe 5 or 2, 3. We probably want, let's just chuck a checkbox in next to this as well so I can see. There's the size of the checkbox. Let's also just do a stack panel, orientation, horizontal. Chuck in the toggle button and check button side by side. Let's just do the margin 0, padding 0, or margin on the left, -10. Let's bring it in so we can see it. If you were going to inline these two, you kind of want them to line up. That's the idea, and you want them to be the same height. What we'll do on that then is in the control template here, we've got padding of button padding. Let's get rid of that as well. Do 0, do 5. That doesn't seem to be changing anything, to be honest. Let's just get rid of that. In the grid here then, we'll try padding on here. Or margin rather. And there you go. So a margin doesn't quite seem to be aligning that correctly. Yeah, it's not the margin on there. It's going to be the padding or the margin ultimately on the button. So it's going to be on here where we have a margin of 5. Yeah, the margin of 5 makes them line up perfect. Now we just need to fix the text block here, which will want a vertical alignment of center. There we go. That's perfect now. So we have a checkbox and a toggle box, and they line up together. So we can either increase the checkbox's corner radius and thin it out, which I think we'll do. So the border thickness of 3 on line 46 will change to 2. That's better. Compile so we see it on this part. And now we either reduce the corner radius to match, which I don't think really works on the toggle button. Maybe there. So a corner radius of 6. And let's just match the corner radius on the checkbox to 6 as well. And that still looks nice. It's a bit rounder. But now we have two styles where they're a lot more similar. There we go. So that's much better. So now if you're going to stack these side by side, you don't have this kind of random size change. And I'm going to leave that in there as a visual reference, even though it's not, a toggle button. It's good to just see a checkbox in there for reference if we ever change in the style, that it's not messing up and misaligning. So we'll leave that there like that. Let's take one last look at the final UI, and I think we're there. And now that's a lot smaller. That isn't aligning vertically here now, even though it should be. And I've noticed the button outline now also doesn't match there. So we're going to have to change the button and the text outlines. All of these, which will be if we search for 3, it's going to be everywhere we've got 3. And then what we might as well do here, instead of doing this border thickness of 3, we can have a reference in the app. So we'll go to the app here. And how we've got all these, we can have an x colon double value, I believe it's going to be. X colon key will be, let's say, primary border thickness. We probably should have done this a while ago. And then inside of there, we'll do 2 now instead of 3. And we combine to this. So everywhere we now see this 3, we'll do dynamic resource, primary border thickness. And it's expecting a thickness, not a double. That will be thickness, which is just thickness as it is. And then we can do 2 like that. So now we can copy that, search for 3 again and double check. So we have a border thickness of 3 inside of combo box as well. Replace that. Got a border thickness inside of combo box. Replace that. Border thickness inside of text box. So it's a good job of doing it now before this was too many. We've got 1 there, 1 there, 1 there. We have 1 inside of buttons. And then we have border thickness of 3 inside of a combo box pop-up. I've done this in quite a few places. Corner radius is fine. Border thickness inside of combo box item. And that's it. We now have a padding, a view model, and a corner radius left. So they are now all up to date. And that should now match across. All the UI should have a similar feel then. You're not getting these discontinuations. There's a new UI, and now you can see the buttons, the outline on this list box, the drop downs. They've all now got the matching thickness, so they don't look out of place. The actions page has this, which the only thing left to fix was this text alignment. Doesn't look like it's aligning vertically there, but everything else I think is fine. So final step then. Why doesn't the toggle button that shows here correctly align in the actions print page? And I think I might know why. Oh, no, that's not the right one. Maybe I have got it right still. Ah, yeah, that's why. We have a label with the title and a toggle box. We're not actually currently using the content. So we can get rid of this label now. Cut that. Well, in fact, just cut the content there. So cut content, delete that. And as part of this toggle box, if we just put them on new lines, we can now paste in here the content. And we should. There we go. Now we've got the label. And again, notice how big that label actually is compared to these labels. Let's just match that. Checkbox, font size is 12. So in toggle box, the text block, you want the default font size to be 12. And then if we run that again, we'll have to reduce that padding. There's quite a lot of padding there now. Go into there, select something. Oh, that looks a lot smaller than that. Oh no, it wasn't 12, was it? It was 16. Pulled the 12 from a different place. There we go. There we go. Maybe a slight bit less padding there. And I think we're then done. So padding to the right, maybe 15. Oh, no, that's the wrong place. Border at the top there. Padding 3, margin 0, margin 5. So 5, 5, 5. Ah, no, you still need the 5 there. Otherwise, text doesn't look right. So what we'll have to do is this text block here wants a margin of, on the left, -5. There we go. Perfect. Go into actions, click something. There we go. That's exactly where I want to see it. If you didn't want the text on the right, you could obviously just use the toggle box with some separate label that you could put above or below. But I kind of like that in this instance because now I can click the text and it also changes the button. So you can see that was a lot more work than I was expecting. I did not expect that to be that difficult. I think a lot of what we struggled with was, as we were styling this toggle button, because we have issues with the kind of cascading styles, and especially control templates as well, adding to the mix, where template binding doesn't work, we discovered pretty much when we were done that this text box is also applying to the toggle button, and then we're fighting with the styles that the checkbox has and having to override them with very explicit kind of definitions here. So this is all what we keep seeing with styles. Even though the styles work great, they're not super powerful yet, and they've definitely got a lot of kind of inheritance issues where you shouldn't expect to have. I should think you never want to see these kind of / templates and subselectors, where you should be able to just bind inside of the control template to these properties where you want to make the styling more obvious. But that's the limitations we have right now, and we still managed to do it, and we now have a toggle button.